In the quiet, picturesque town of Cedar Grove, the gruesome murder of Henry Callahan sent shock waves through the community. What appeared to be a peaceful, close-knit suburban enclave was shattered by a crime of passion and betrayal that revealed the dark underbelly of seemingly idyllic lives. August 2015, at the heart of this turmoil were the Callahans. Henry, a 50-year-old real estate mogul known for his charisma and business acumen, and his wife Clara, a 48-year-old boutique owner with a flair for fashion and a magnetic personality, had been pillars of the community for over 15 years. Their marriage was perfect, almost too perfect, and this was how the entire community perceived them. They were close friends with their next-door neighbors, the Parkers. Simon, a university professor, and his wife, Emily, a landscape architect. They had recently moved to Cedar Grove with their 21-year-old son, Jerry, to escape the urban chaos and seek a quieter life. These neighbors never knew that their lives were about to turn around for the worst. In fact, this is putting it lightly. Their lives were about to crumble in such a way that it shook the entire community. And even the country. Henry Callahan had always been an ambitious man. He was born to a middle-class family in Detroit, and with sheer willpower and intelligence, clawed his way up through the real estate industry with a combination of charm and relentless drive. By his early 40s, he had built his real estate empire, his name synonymous with success, and he was the sort of man that everyone wanted to relate with. Clara, on the other hand, and came from a background of affluence, the daughter of a renowned author and a classical pianist. She grew up in an environment that valued culture and refinement. Clara had studied art history at college, dreaming of curating in a museum, but she decided to hold it off because her boyfriend then wanted them to settle down. But along the lines, he left her for another woman. She was heartbroken and lost all the will to further her dream of a museum. Then she met Henry, and they kicked off instantly and decided to get married. That was when something happened. 2 years into their marriage, she took in the family was so happy, and Clara herself was super excited about this. Henry was taking more time away from work to take care of her, and their family was the very definition of happiness. Sadly, things changed when tragically their child born premature did not survive, and Clara's subsequent efforts to conceive had been unsuccessful. Let's go back a bit to how they met. Their paths crossed at a charity auction in 200,000. Henry, already successful but lacking in personal connections, was immediately captivated by Clara's elegance, and Grace Clara, a former model who had endured a difficult relationship and a heartbreak, saw in Henry a chance to rebuild her life. He offered her emotional support and financial stability. Their courtship was swift and passionate, leading to a grand wedding. The ceremony was lavish, held in a historic mansion with silk drapes, crystal chandeliers, and a garden filled with thousands of roses. Clara wore a designer gown, while Henry looked like a distinguished businessman. The early years of their marriage were blissful. Henry's career soared, earning him wealth and accolades. He became a partner at his firm, known for his success. Clara found solace in opening a boutique, her sanctuary, where she could channel her creativity and passion for fashion. The boutique thrived, becoming popular among the town's elite, and gave Clara a sense of purpose. As the years passed, their perfect life began to dull. Henry's work demanded more time, with late nights at the office and frequent business trips. The once inseparable couple drifted apart. Clara, feeling increasingly isolated, poured herself into her boutique. She expanded her business, hosted events, and sought to fill the void with her work. The loss of their child was a turning point. It was a silent wound that neither spoke of, but both felt deeply. The nursery they had prepared remained empty, a constant reminder of their grief. The inability to conceive again added to the strain. Clara's dreams of a family faded, replaced by emptiness. She attended fertility treatments alone, enduring the emotional and physical toll in silence. Henry, though supportive, buried himself in work, unable to confront the shared pain. Their home, once filled with laughter and warmth, grew cold. And silent Clara would sit in the nursery for hours, surrounded by the unfulfilled promise of motherhood. Henry, when he was home, retreated into his study, drowning himself in work to escape the unbearable reality. Their conversations became brief, lacking intimacy. Clara's boutique sadly became a refuge from the emptiness of her home. She spent long hours there, finding temporary solace in the activity and creative projects. Yet every evening she returned to a house that felt increasingly like a stranger's home. The distance between them was palpable, a chasm neither knew how to bridge. Their shared grief and unspoken fears festered, creating tension in their lives. By the summer of 2015, the Callahans' marriage had become a shadow of what it used to be to outsiders. They were still the golden couple. Henry was on the verge of closing a monumental deal that would solidify his status in the industry. Clara's boutique was flourishing, her designs gaining a loyal following, but behind closed doors they were simply roommates. They were more like strangers. Conversations were sparse, focusing on schedules and social events. Physical intimacy had become rare, each touch a reminder of their unspoken grief and unmet expectations. Both Henry and Clara found it easier to maintain the illusion of happiness than to confront the chasm that had grown between them, unbeknownst to them. This fragile balance was about to be disrupted in a way that would affect not just their lives, but the entire community of Cedar Grove. The Parkers had moved into the house next door to the Callahans in early 2011, seeking a fresh start. Simon, a distinguished literature professor, had taken a position at a nearby university, drawn by the promise of a quieter life away from the bustling city. Emily, a successful landscape architect, had embraced the move as an opportunity to bring her creative vision to new projects. Their son Jerry, a college junior studying environmental science, was spending the summer at home, working on a local conservation project. The Parkers quickly became known for their warmth and intelligence, fitting seamlessly into the chill vibe of Cedar Grove. Simon's engaging lectures at the university earned him respect, while Emily's stunning garden designs became the talk of the neighborhood. Emily, though initially reluctant about the move, found herself enjoying the tranquility and natural beauty of their new home. It was during a neighborhood block party in late June that Jerry Parker first saw Clara Callahan in a new light. The Callahans were hosting the event, and Henry was, as usual, the center of attention, discussing his latest business ventures. Clara, feeling out of place among the crowd, had retreated to the patio to get some fresh air. Jerry, seeking a break from socializing, happened to wander outside at the same moment. Their eyes met, and Jerry offered Clara a tentative smile. They struck up a conversation about gardening, a topic Clara had recently taken an interest in to fill her lonely days. Jerry, with his knowledge of environmental science, shared tips and suggestions, and a bond began to form over the next few weeks. Clara and Jerry found reasons to spend time together. Clara invited Jerry to help with her garden, and Jerry was glad for the chance to apply his studies practically as you would or wouldn't expect. Their first kiss happened one rainy afternoon in early July. Jerry had come over to discuss a new garden layout, and as they worked, a sudden downpour forced them to seek shelter in the Callahan sunroom. As they stood by the window, watching the rain, an unspoken tension filled the air. Clara, feeling a connection she hadn't felt in years, leaned in and kissed Jerry. For Jerry, the kiss was a revelation, a mix of excitement and fear. Despite the complexity of their feelings, they found themselves drawn together, their interactions growing more frequent and intense. They were careful, aware of the risks. Their meetings were discreet, often in Clara's boutique or secluded spots around town. Yet as the summer progressed, maintaining their secret became increasingly difficult. They almost got caught several times. Close calls and near discoveries heightened their anxiety, but the intensity of their emotions kept them coming back. Clara felt a resurgence of joy and passion. And to be honest, this was something totally different from her life with Henry. Jerry, captivated by Clara's sophistication and the thrill of their forbidden relationship, found himself developing genuine feelings and falling deeper and deeper for the older married woman on August 10, 2015. Cedar Grove awoke to another blistering summer day for Henry Callahan. It was a pivotal day. He had this very crucial meeting that could secure his largest deal, yet he left early, leaving Clara in bed, lost in her thoughts. Clara, knowing Henry would be gone all day, sent a text to Jerry asking him to come over in the afternoon. At this point, Jerry was growing increasingly uncomfortable with his feelings for Clara. He loved the woman, but this love just didn't make any sense at all. Jerry then decided that it was about time he ended this and saw the message as an opportunity to confront his feelings. He replied, agreeing to meet the day dragged on for both of them. Clara went through the motions at her boutique, distracted and anxious. Jerry, working on his conservation project, found it hard to focus at 1:30 p.m. Jerry made his way to the Callahan house, his heart pounding. Clara welcomed him with a nervous smile, leading him to the sunroom where they had first kissed. Jerry began to speak, but Clara, misinterpreting his hesitation, silenced him with a kiss. Despite their misgivings, they gave in to the moment, their need for each other overwhelming their doubts. Meanwhile, across town, Henry Callahan was in his office. His frustration mounting the numbers for his deal weren't aligning, and he knew he faced a long night of revisions and negotiations. Henry Callahan made a snap decision. He would go home, regroup, and collect his thoughts and return to the office later to finish up before for dinner at 2:15 p.m. His car pulled into the driveway of their lakeside house in Crestwood. He noticed Jerry Parker's rusty truck parked a little way down the street, but thought nothing of it. Probably helping Clara with some errands, he mused as he unlocked the front door. The house was quiet, but something felt off. A half-empty glass of orange juice sat on the kitchen couch. This was very weird because Clara didn't even like orange. Then he heard a muffled sound coming from upstairs. Frowning, he climbed the stairs, the noise growing louder as he approached the master bedroom. What he saw when he opened the door would be forever seared into his memory. His wife, the woman he had loved for 15 years, was in their bed with Jerry Parker, the 21-year-old neighbor's son, who he never thought was close to her. Henry's shock turned to rage before he could think. He lunged forward, shouting and asking what the hell they were doing. Jerry, in a panic, scrambled to get off the bed, knocking over the nightstand in the process. Clara screamed, trying to pull the sheets around herself. Henry's fury propelled him forward, and he grabbed Jerry by the collar, yanking him off the bed. Jerry struggled, gasping, pleaded with Henry that he could explain. But Henry was beyond reason, his fists flying in the chaos. Jerry's hand found the heavy lamp on the bedside table. Desperation driving him, he swung it wildly. The lamp connected with Henry's head with a sickening thud. Henry staggered, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal, before collapsing to the floor. The room fell into a haunting silence. Clara's scream pierced the quiet as she scrambled to cover herself and process what had just happened. Blood pulled rapidly around Henry's motionless form. Jerry dropped the lamp. His hands, trembling, horror and disbelief etched on his face. He looked at Clara, his voice barely a whisper. "What have we done, Clara?" Her voice shaking but determined insisted they hide the body. She told Jerry that she can't let him go to jail. And when she said this, her eyes were wild with fear. Jerry nodded numbly. They quickly dressed, their minds racing with panic and fear. They wrapped Henry's body in a sheet, struggling under its weight as they carried it down the stairs. The task was grueling, each step filled with dread and regret. They finally managed to heave Henry's body into the bed of Jerry's truck. Panting from the exertion, Clara drove Henry's car to a nearby parking lot, leaving it there to make it look like he had gone out. She then returned home where she and Jerry began the grim task of cleaning up the blood. Every swipe of the cloth felt like a betrayal, the scent of bleach mingling with their guilt. The master bedroom, once a sanctuary, now felt like a crime scene for 2 days. Clara and Jerry avoided each other, the weight of their secret pressing down on them. Clara answered calls from Henry's office, telling his colleagues that he was away on a business trip. But when Henry failed to show up for a critical meeting, his office sent someone to the house to check on him. The HR manager stood at the door, suspicion clouding his eyes as he asked why she hadn't filed a missing person report. Clara, her heart pounding, tried to stay calm, lying that she thought he was on a business trip. To deflect a suspicion, she called the police. Right then and there, the police arrived quickly, their presence adding to the tension. They began investigating and questioning Clara, who struggled to maintain her composure. Meanwhile, Jerry was back at school, consumed by guilt and fear. He had cut off communication with Clara, and they had agreed not to speak until the situation calmed down. Detective Laura Mitchell was assigned to the case, a seasoned investigator with a sharp mind. She immediately sensed something was off. She started with routine questions, but quickly delved deeper. Clara's story was full of holes, and her nervousness was palpable. Mitchell's keen eyes missed nothing, noting every tremor in Clara's voice and every inconsistency in her account. The case was becoming more complex, and the shadows of suspicion grew longer over Cedar Grove. Detective Laura Mitchell began her questioning keenly. Observing Clara's every move, she asked Clara about the last time she saw her husband. Clara, trying to sound convincing, claimed he had left for a business trip on Monday morning. When pressed for details about the trip, Clara shook her head, stating that he often didn't mention his destinations as it was part of his job. Mitchell nodded and made notes, requesting access to Henry's phone records and emails. Clara, feeling trapped, agreed. Over the next few days, the investigation intensified. Mitchell's team found nothing in Henry's phone and email records to indicate a business trip. Neighbors mentioned seeing Jerry's truck at the Callahan house the day Henry disappeared, prompting Mitchell to return to Clara when questioned about Jerry's truck. Clara lied, saying he was helping with some yard work. Mitchell, skeptical, noted the implausibility of yard work in the middle of a hot July afternoon, but let it slide for the moment, shifting her focus to Jerry Parker. Jerry, struggling with the memory of Henry's lifeless body, was approached by Mitchell at his school. When questioned about his presence at the Callahan house, Jerry repeated Clara's lie about yard work, his voice shaking. Mitchell, sensing his fear, didn't believe him. She suggested that coming clean would be better for him, but Jerry maintained his composure and insisted he knew nothing. Mitchell knew. She needed more evidence. She called in forensic teams to the Callahan house, where they discovered traces of blood that had been hastily cleaned. Clara's story began to unravel further. Mitchell noted inconsistencies in Clara's timeline and her increasing anxiety. Despite Clara's efforts to maintain the facade, the pressure mounted. The breakthrough came from an anonymous tipster who had seen Clara and Jerry together frequently, their interactions suspiciously intimate. Mitchell investigated their relationship more deeply, uncovering secret emails and text messages that revealed the depth of their affair and their desperate attempts to keep it hidden. Confronted with the evidence, Clara's calm demeanor began to crack. When asked to explain the communications with Jerry, she tried to downplay their relationship as mere friendship, but Mitchell was relentless. The detective pointed out that friends don't exchange such messages and mentioned the blood traces found in the house. Clara stood her ground, insisting that Henry had left for a business trip. Mitchell turned her attention back to Jerry, who had been avoiding contact with Clara. She arranged for Jerry to be brought in for further questioning. Feeling the pressure, Jerry decided to hire a lawyer during the interrogation. Mitchell laid out the evidence piece by piece, eroding Jerry's defenses. She mentioned the blood found in the house and the lack of a business trip, pressing for the truth. Jerry's silence, advised by his lawyer, spoke volumes. forensic experts confirmed the blood evidence as Henry's with mounting evidence. Mitchell obtained a search warrant for Jerry's truck where they found fibers matching the sheets from the Callahan house, and further blood traces. Henry's body was discovered in the nearby parking lot. Hastily concealed with irrefutable evidence in hand, Mitchell moved swiftly to arrest Clara and Jerry. Clara was taken into custody, her face a mask of resignation while Jerry was arrested. His fate sealed by the overwhelming proof of their crime. The community of Cedar Grove was rocked by the scandal. The idyllic facade shattered forever as the trial progressed. More secrets emerged. Henry's colleagues testified about his mounting stress, and frequent arguments with Clara neighbors spoke of the tension they had sensed in the Callahan household. The jury faced a complex web of motivations and actions, each thread leading to the tragic climax. Clara took the stand. Her composure cracking under the weight of her guilt, she admitted to the affair, but insisted she never meant for Henry to die. She described the moments before Henry's death, explaining how Jerry, in a panic, had grabbed the lamp. Jerry, almost in tears, years recounted the fateful day with a mixture of regret and sorrow. He described the confrontation with Henry, the struggle, and the moment he struck Henry in a blind panic. Jerry's parents sat in the courtroom, their faces etched with grief and disbelief. They listened as their son detailed how he had become entangled in Clara's life and how his actions had led to Henry's death. They couldn't reconcile the image of their beloved son with the events that had transpired. Their sorrow was palpable, a stark contrast to the stoic facade Jerry tried to maintain. Mitchell's testimony was crucial. She outlined the investigation, the inconsistencies in Clara and Jerry's stories, and the forensic evidence that ultimately led to their arrest tests. She detailed the discovery of Henry's body, the fibers in Jerry's truck, and the blood traces in the Callahan house. Her methodical presentation painted a clear picture of guilt. The courtroom was tense as the jury deliberated for days. The weight of the decision was evident, the silence in the room almost unbearable when the jury finally returned with a verdict. The foreman announced the decision. Jerry Parker, we find you guilty of second-degree murder. Clara Callahan, we find you guilty of being an accessory to murder. Clara was sentenced to 15 years in prison, while Jerry received a 25-year sentence. The community of Cedar Grove was left to pick up the pieces. Forever changed by the events that had unfolded, Detective Mitchell, haunted by the case, couldn't help but wonder what might have been if different choices had been made. The Callahans and Parkers had been ordinary people, their lives intertwined in ways no one could have predicted. The tragedy that struck was a stark reminder of how fragile the facade of normally can be. In the quiet aftermath, Cedar Grove struggled to return to its peaceful existence. The shadow of the Callahan case loomed large, a constant reminder that even the most idyllic communities can harbor dark secrets. The Parker family, shattered by the revelations and the loss of their son to the prison system, became reclusive, their pain. ATT testament to the far-reaching consequences of the tragic affair. The Callahan house, once a symbol of success and harmony, stood empty, a silent witness to the life that once thrived within its walls.